My name is Lejla.
My name is Erica.
My name's Jade.
My name is Nida.
My name's Ebony.
I'm a survivor of domestic abuse.
Today I'm breaking my silence.
How are you feeling?
Nervous.
Nervous?
I don't want anyone to say I'm okay because that would be a complete lie.
Absolutely, we're not.
No.
Sick.
Anxious.
How triggered have you been?
A lot.
Waiting for this day?
This
Quite
week.
a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This week has been awful.
Why are you here?
It's important, I think, for on behalf of all of us, that we are here to obviously represent how we feel, what we've been through, but also because we're so aware that this is such a huge problem. It isn't for us, it's for all survivors, it's for all women, all children who have gone through horrific experiences, who may be in them right now. This is a collective thing, you know, this is why we're here. It's why I'm here personally, but I think you guys are all on the same page.
Definitely.
Honestly,
Definitely.
It's crazy because I had this like massive panic attack, I think Tuesday or Wednesday night, and this massive imposter syndrome, and I was like, you're making all of this up? This never happened to you. And all of that gaslighting that I experienced for 8.5 years, all of a sudden just like came flooding back, and I doubted everything about today. I was going through like my own story in my head, and I kept thinking to myself, did this really happen? Like, no, you're being dramatic, you're being over the top. But it did happen. I know it did happen. And trying to remind myself that this is real, and it was a part of my life for 8.5 years. I don't know why it's so hard to actually connect with that former me.
Yeah. It's like I put it to the back of my head.
Yeah.
Take a breath.
Breathe. I think it's so important, like, we can't change what happened to us, but I think it's so important to use our own experiences and stuff so that other people that could be at the beginning of their situation can think, do you know what, it does get a lot worse and stuff. I think, like, especially as well, it's a lot easier to relate to somebody that has been through it and has come out the other side, like, so.
And I think what we were just saying a minute ago is, when I was desperately trying to figure out what was happening to me, I didn't have anyone to talk to. None of my peers, my colleagues, my friends, well, on the outside, didn't look like they were going through what I was going through, until I started literally typing into Google, my husband hits me, will he ever change?
You do. I think you look for a solution without actually understanding that that person is the problem. Like, you're looking for solutions that you can do, like encouraging them, like, oh, this and this, but
absolutely,
it just, yeah, it's a no.
And I think so much of it is because we're so shamed as victims and survivors, right? Is that we never think what they're doing is wrong because of the effects of mental abuse and emotional abuse and the gaslighting. We're constantly, like you said, trying to find a way out of it, but not a way away from them, just to have some kind of
the situation.
Right, just to diffuse the situation.
I think, like, in my own experience, it was a case of as well, like, if you didn't do this, then I wouldn't have had to do that, and you do, and you sit and you think, do you know what, he's right, if I didn't say this or I didn't go and do this, then he wouldn't have to feel angry. And it's like, obviously now when you come out the other side, you're like, absolutely no, like, it doesn't matter what you said or what you did, this person is an abuser. Like,
it's almost like you blame yourself for it, for the whole thing. Like, I had no one, like, my family didn't even speak to me at that point, and it was hard. It was really hard.
Even for me, because I was quite young, you know, still being in school, I was naive. I didn't understand even what the concept of a healthy relationship should look like. So when all of these things started to happen, I just thought, okay, this is normal. It's gonna get better. And when they keep telling me what I'm doing wrong, I'm like, okay, this is my fault. This is what I need to do to change. And it took me a few years to actually sit back and realize, wait, this is not right. This is not healthy. And it was only then I decided to, okay, I need to get out of this. I need to seek help. I need to get support. And it just went from there.
And at that point, when you're ready to seek help, there's always like, okay, where do I go?
Yeah.
Who do I talk to? Because I haven't told anyone.
And how honest do I want to be?
About it. Yeah, I feel like
Because
even
I
when
have
you
children.
first reach out, I think you definitely still sugarcoat it. And your first thing of telling people, you don't tell them the full extreme of things. You tell them little bits and stuff that you think, okay, because you're still so uncertain, like if you're going to get back with that person or whether you really are going to be finished. Like for me, I didn't tell the full story to like my friend, and it was only then when the police got involved in stuff that I was then actually extensively speaking about what had been going on, and it was like, wow.
I remember that, and I so relate with that, because I remember when the words kind of first started to come out of my mouth, I was on the phone to my mum and I said, oh, he just pushed me in an argument. But I knew deep down what had happened, and that was like when I was thinking of leaving. And you're 100% right. You don't tell people the full truth because you're so scared. You're so scared. I kept it hidden for 8.5 years, and at that point I thought, who's going to believe me? And also, I was still in denial.
Yes.
Because he didn't hit me every day.
Mhm.
I didn't even think about the emotional and mental abuse that had been happening every day sometimes for 8.5 years.
Yeah, I think like even for me, like, a lot of people think that just because something doesn't happen every day, that it's not as bad as everybody else is, or it's not bad enough that they have to leave. Like, I think people don't really.
And I remember when I was leaving, I started writing down the incidents, but just the violence. Again, the mental and the emotional abuse never really came into play at that point. And the ones that I could remember were just 7 particular incidents, right? And I was so like blindsided, and I don't know if it was rose-tinted glasses or the effects of gaslighting and trauma bonding, that I remember looking at that piece of paper, and I still have it in my notebook. And I was like, oh, is that it? Like, he's not punching me every day. He's not slapping me because I haven't made him dinner. He's not pulling my hair because I spoke too loud. But I was completely minimising about the fact that the first time he was violent, he strangled me. And then the next time after that, he punched me in my face. And then the next major incident I can remember was when he threw me through a glass door, and I'm still scarred from that. I can't believe that there was ever a time where I thought, ah, it's nothing.
Yeah.
And that honestly, I think was just the effects of the trauma bonding and the gaslighting.
I think that's why education is like so important, because it's like, if I bet for like all of us, if we knew the things that we knew now, like trauma bonding and gaslighting and stuff, you'd be more aware of what's actually going on. Whereas like I knew nothing at the time. I knew nothing about anything. I just thought I really loved this person, and I just wanted him to love me and be kind to me and nice to me as I was to him. And it's like, I would think, oh, but do you know what? He's really good with my son, or he's really good at doing X, Y, Z. So maybe that's why I have to compromise on like the fact that he gets angry.
That word compromise kills me, because I thought relationships are about compromise, right?
Yeah.
I thought that it's okay to, you know, give in, because that's what you're supposed to do. That's a healthy relationship. And I didn't really understand that actually what I was given into was emotional abuse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was because the fear of the punishment if I didn't do what he wanted me to do. And I think a lot of the time, because the punishment wasn't physical and it wasn't violent, I just didn't think it was abuse. I didn't at all.
It's almost like that was normal. That was a normal life. In the end, it was just normal.
It does. It just becomes every day is like that constant battle. Like for me, like he would break my nose and different, but then he'd play the saviour and he'd be really loving to me, and he'd be like, he wouldn't ever say sorry, but he would get plasters and he would wipe my face, and he'd be like, oh, next time, like, please just don't do this again, because I don't want to have to do this to you again. And I sit there feeling sorry for myself, like, I can't believe I've made him do this to me. And it's like, now looking back, I can't believe that I even...
Do you have a moment where like the violence was heightened, or like, I don't know, at its peak?
After leaving, like even during the relationship, like every day would be like standardly anything. It could be over anything, like it would be violent. But I think it was a lot worse when I left, because it was like I didn't have any routine. When we was living together and stuff, I would know standardly, oh, he's going to go mad and stuff. But when we'd split up and like he wasn't supposed to be contacting, it was that thing of not knowing when he was going to turn up. So that's when he would turn up and he was smashing the windows and the doors, and it felt like my anxiety was at its worst, because you don't know what's coming. And people would say like, oh, block any numbers that he calls you from. But him calling me, telling me I'm going to be there in 5 minutes, I'm going to go mad, I knew he was coming and I knew what was coming. So I would definitely say for me it was at its worst when I was leaving.
Do you have a time, Jade?
My goodness. Just when you've gone through so many different things, your mind kind of spirals and you think that was bad, but then so was that. Oh, it wasn't that bad. Yeah, it was bad. And you talk about it and you downplay it so much that even sitting here right now, and you said about imposter syndrome, you feel like, oh my goodness, like, did this happen to me? Is this real life? Are we really sat here saying that this has happened? Really, we should say all of it. All of it was the worst point, because there's no behaviour that is acceptable, you know, that you could ever condone and play off against each other and say, well, this was bad and this wasn't. All of it was unacceptable. None of it should have happened. But the darkest and the lowest point for me was when, you know, he strangled my 3-week-old son, you know, and I just think, but that still wasn't enough for me to leave. I still went on and had another baby, you know, and I still feel sick at the thought that I ever thought that that was okay to do that. But then again, it's that whole merry-go-round of, you know, don't blame yourself, Jade. You know, you went through this, you were the victim, you're not responsible for someone else's behaviour, you didn't know that that was going to happen. But I think you always feel responsible because you can kind of gauge their behaviour. You don't know how far it will escalate, but you try to minimise it as much as you possibly can so that you can grab onto any bit of control that you can, especially if you have children, because
You're risk assessing.
Yeah, all the time.
All the time.
Like, I think children do play a massive part. Like, I never used to like fight back in them situations. I would literally lay there and I would just pray that it's over as quick as possible. I wouldn't cry. Like, I would literally hold it in, because I knew the minute I gave anything, whether it be a scream or anything, it would double. And it was like that thing of like, I knew that my son was at that point would be under his bed hiding with a teddy crying, but he would do a silent cry, because he knew if he was to even cry out loud, then it would be worse for him himself. And I think like, so yeah, you just don't fight back because you're just trying to think of everything in the surroundings. Or I wouldn't want him to smash up too much of the house that would be irreplaceable, or for people to notice, like all the holes in my doors and the walls and stuff. I was constantly like, God, putting towels over them, pretending that I'm drying bed sheets and stuff when people would visit. Like, you just try and diffuse the situation as much as possible.
Protecting them.
Yeah.
And surviving.
Literally, like pure survival mode. Like.
And I relate to both of that so much, because I went on to have 2 other children with him. It was like a cycle. And my eldest used to sit on the stairs and listen to it all. And, you know, he got abused as well. And he would always like try and be like, Mummy, move out of the way. And it was just so heartbreaking. Like, the other 2 were too young
to understand. That's literally like my son. And I remember like he would come at first, he would come and try and get involved, and he would cling to my legs and stuff, but then he would grab him and he'd be dragging him. So it got to a point where he just couldn't. And in them moments, like for me, when I look back, it's like I went through a phase of feeling really like I can't believe I didn't do anything. But then it's like, as time's gone on, it's like I couldn't protect myself, never mind protect my son at the same time. But it is really.
And like, just listening to the 3 of you say that, right, it's so different to my experience of the violence, because my child never actually witnessed the violence and she was never a victim of it. But I very naively thought that because she wasn't a direct victim of it,
she wouldn't pick
because
up on
she didn't
anything.
witness the violence, I was like, oh, it's fine. She's never seen her mum, you know, be thrown through the glass door or punched in the face. Other than, well, there was one incident when he did punch me when I was holding her. I think she was maybe 10 weeks old. I had her in July. It was in November time that happened, so that's roughly around 10 weeks old. And I'll never, he hit me with such force that where I was standing, holding her in front of the single bed that we had in this small flat we were living in, that I just fell on the bed. Just the way that I was holding her, I was obviously desperately trying not to, I didn't want her to fall on the floor, and I was holding her so hard that I just lost my balance, and where the force was so hard. And I'll never forget, I went to bed that night and I woke up with a black eye, and it was on this eye. And the next day, I begged him and I said, why don't we go on a date night tonight? What? Why don't we go on a date night tonight? I said, I'll go get my mum to look after Bella. And we did. And we drove to my mum's. I'd put makeup on, of course, how many of us have done that? And I went in there, I sat there with my mum and my nan and spoke to them as if nothing had happened. Erica, do you have a time when the violence was at its peak?
I think for me, I don't. It was just a period of time that lasted around 3 years, where 1 month was just better than others, and you have the love bombing that I think really messed up with my mental health as well, because at the time I started to realise there were some issues, and then the moment you finally feel like you're about to slip away, they manage to lure you back in. They'll take you out, they'll buy you a gift, they'll tell you they'll never do it again. So there will be periods of time where it was just bad, and then the next 2 months would be so good, and you're like, wow, they're finally changing, they're becoming better for me, I'm seeing the effort. And then the next month will just be absolute hell. The mental abuse, emotional abuse, the physical abuse, sexual abuse, all of that. It was just there, and that just kept happening. It was just an on and off thing, on and off thing. And it basically took it, almost breaking me for me to finally be like, I can't do this anymore, because I felt like I'd rather be, away from this, healing from this, than stuck in it, because it was that bad that I just felt like emotionally it couldn't get any worse. It can only get better if I walk away. And that's what it took for me to just finally break that bond, because it is a trauma bond at the end of the day. When it gets to that sort of level, it's really the trauma bonding that's keeping you there, because you don't really love them. Deep down, that they're upsetting you, they're hurting you. And it's just being able to walk away and ignoring those things they say to you, I can't live life without you, don't leave me, all those things that can really just mess up with how you think. You don't want to feel guilty for hurting them, so now you're putting them first. So it was the day I finally put myself first that I managed to walk away.
And you're so right about, because it's such a vicious cycle. And in the end, as I was leaving, I started to realise that this is just a bond, because I hated him.
Yeah, I couldn't live with you, but I cannot live without
you. I hated him. I despised him. I get goosebumps now thinking about it. Our routine in the morning would be that we drop our daughter to school, then he'd drop me to work, and I'd sit in the car and I would feel my skin would crawl. Yes. I felt like he was keeping me a prisoner. And I just could not break it. I remember this one particular time, he dropped me to work, and I'd just despise him, and then I'd go into work, and then I'd be like, look, this is it. I have to leave. This man has to be gone from my life, and I'd be so strong. And I started talking to a couple of work colleagues about it, and they'd be like, Lejla, you can do this, you can do this. And then I'd message him, and I'd be like, I'm so done. And then the second he'd be like, yeah, right, okay, I'm done too. And I'd be like, no, oh my God, please,
yes,
please don't
the
leave
amount
me.
of times now, when I look back, I would be on the floor in absolute tears after he'd literally beaten me unconscious, and I'd be on the floor begging him, because he's telling me that he's done with me after doing that. And I was literally pleading with him, please don't leave me, I love you. I cannot believe, at this moment in time, that I begged a man to stay with me after he did those things to me. But I think, for me, I really struggled with leaving, and I think it was only really when social services and the police put things in place and said we will take your children at the end of the day, that I had no choice, that I couldn't go back into that thing of being with him, because otherwise I think I would have been easily drawn back, because he was doing the whole chasing thing, and then he would be really nice for a while, and I was like, okay, he's good. But no, it is crazy.
And in the end, I remember
how I left, right? I was at work and I called my brother. At this point, I told a few people. I'd call my brother. And I knew once I told my brother, there was no going back. I knew it because I needed to be held accountable at this point. I needed someone to really be like, no, you are leaving and that's it. Because I just was not strong enough to do it on my own. And I called my brother and I don't know what it was, but the incessant love bombing at the end, I hadn't experienced it from him before, so it was suffocating for me. And I knew that this was never ever going to get any better. And that was that final moment where I was like, no, I need to call my brother now, because once I tell him, there's no going back. And then I realised I need to tell more people because I need them to hold me accountable too, so that I don't go back again. And so you saying about the social services and the police, it's like, I can't believe that we're so deep in these bonds and in this emotional and mental abuse that we literally have to be held accountable by agencies and officials and by the family members and friends to break it and to leave.
It's really hard, and I think unless you've experienced it, you don't get it. You don't get it because it is so easy for an outsider to just say to you, like, how can you let someone do that to you and your child? And it's just like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I literally don't know.
I think it's the horror on people's faces as well, and they kind of look at you like you're mentally unstable. So you then end up backtracking on what you've said because you don't think that you can trust certain information with the people that you've told. So you then go back and minimise, and it doesn't look like you can be trusted then, even though you're reaching out for support and you're crying out for an olive branch for someone to believe you, to take you in and to make you feel safe. Equally, they're looking at you like, oh my goodness, what's going on with you?
It's almost like you feel embarrassed that it's happened to you when you're telling people. But in the beginning, I literally just touched on it when I told people. It's only now recently, when I've probably the last few months actually, when I've gone into depth about what he did to me.
Yeah, that was the same for me. I didn't really, my mum and like my family didn't really know the extent of the details until court, and obviously then when everything was played out and all the evidence and everything, that then my mum just was like, had no idea what had actually been. And then obviously even for friends, I never told them the extent of things until Lejla told my story, and so many of my friends are like, now all these little things make sense, like they can piece it together now, and they're like, so that's why this was going on and this is why you did this. And it's like, you do get that sense of, oh my God, do I look like I'm being dramatic? Do I look like I'm exaggerating? Or
I don't even tell I don't know why I kept this one particular incident a secret. I don't know why. But when I was pregnant and he attacked me when I was pregnant and he pushed me into the wardrobe and then pushed me into the bed, but I never told my family that. And I don't know I don't know if I'm embarrassed about it. I don't know if I'm scared of the reaction I'm going to get from other people. But again, my friends and family didn't know those details until I told my own story publicly. Why do we keep that as, like, we didn't do that. They did that to us.
it is really bizarre.
And yet we still carry all that shame.
Even when you shared my story, I was so like on the comments, like possessively on the comments, because I was waiting for someone to say like, how can you let someone do that to your son? Or like, I was waiting for someone to kind of blame me and like, how could you not have got your child out of that situation? Like, never mind yourself. Because you still kind of feel like, how did I let these things happen?
I think for me it's quite different because I feel like no matter who I told, at a certain point, even they couldn't sway me. My trauma bond was that bad that even when I told my girls, I would still go back and reply to his text. I would still go back and meet him. And it only actually took me reporting it to realise the magnitude of my situation. And that's when I knew, okay, this is done. I am free. I'm not going back. That was the moment I knew, that I wasn't going to go back to that.